colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you're joining us from. We're really happy to have you with us today for the launch of this very exciting Integrated Policy Practitioners Network. We're going to start in just a minute. What's always helpful for us at the beginning is if you could please pop us a little note in the chat. We'll say hello to each other and let us know where you're joining us from. We'll start in just a minute. We have a packed hour ahead, so I'm going to open the event itself. Really welcome to all of you that are joining now. You'll see that we're just enjoying the conversation in the chat and finding out where everyone is joining us from today. Without further ado, I'm introducing our first speaker, the Director of Policy and Program Support for UNDP, our Assistant Secretary General. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Dear colleagues, it's really great that we are here together to launch this integrated policy network, that is born out of the UN SDG task team on integrated policy support. Right? So I think it's really gratifying to see that non-agencies and 14 are funding members of this, and 14 UN agencies are already a member of this Integrated Policy Practitioners Network, IPPN. And so UNDP, FAO, ILO, IOM, UNAIDS, UNFPA, UNICEF, UN Women, and WFP are working together, to establish this network. And we know that this is co-created, by these agencies, and following the discussions in the UN SDG task team on integrated policy support. So I think it's really that we are taking the integrated policy support to the next level. And we know that we are working together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda. And it is a complex agenda that requires all UN agencies and all partners to work together. And we have been doing so for the last few years. And the IPPN, the Integrated Policy Practitioners Network, is built on the achievements that the interagency task team has done over the last few years. For example, we have undertook 53 MAPS engagements, right, over the last few years, and we have an expert practitioners learning journey, and nearly 204,000 practitioners have enrolled in various e-courses from all over the world in our learning network. And also we have a UN SDG Acceleration Toolkit that have compiled more than 100 practical and actionable tools that are there to support our collective action on the ground. Right? And during COVID response, we have also worked together to support our country assessments, preparations of country response frameworks, and so forth. So I think moving forward, the SDG agenda, and also the in our common agenda that the Secretary General has proposed, demand that we really work together and learn lessons, right, and be a network of knowledge, facilitation, and do everything we can in collaboration effectively to support the development of our countries. So I think that this is what we hope that the IPPN will take us to the next level of SDG integration support at country level. So I won't say more, but just to also thank the Republic of Korea, for its funding that enabled us to bring forward, this initiative So let's work together to make IPPN a great success. Thank you very much, everyone. Really looking forward to hearing more. Over to you, Laura and Nadine.
Thank you so much, Haliang. I'm just going to share my screen, colleagues. We have a set of colleagues who will be speaking from across the UN system, and I'm just going to share my screen first, put myself back on camera as well too. Okay. I'm in business. So before we hear from our speakers, we'll be hearing from UNICEF, from ILO, from UN Women, from FAO, from UNAIDS. And as Haliang mentioned, this is a network reflective of even more UN partners. And we hope for those that are joining us today, you'll also come under the tent and join us. And although we are representing many different entities here, we're representing one ambition and one objective. And I think this is really what's incredibly special about the network that we're proposing. I want to tell you a little bit about it so we all have the same background information before we hear from our speakers across the UN family. So the first is one of our really important starting points for this network is the Qcpr Resolution, which did again request the UN system to provide integrated policy support, and how important that was to move towards integrated action on the 2030 agenda. As Haliang mentioned, we've had a task team which was operating within the UN system as part of the UN SDG. And we achieved a number of things. This was quite a dynamic team that was chaired by UNDP, UNICEF, and ILO. And as a whole constituent of partners in that task team, we wanted to take the work forward. We wanted to open the space. We wanted to make this more inclusive, but we wanted to be as action-oriented, as practical as possible in bringing these insights of how do we work with integrated approaches to the biggest challenges that we're facing in countries right now. And of course, this was exemplified for all of us in the challenges of COVID-19. And really here we saw not only the interconnectedness of the problems, but the universality and indivisibility of the 2030 agenda, and how important it is for us to maintain and accelerate that mindset and those tools and systems to be able to respond not only to COVID, but for a fair and a sustainable recovery. So we put the network together. Many of you, I hope, who are also joining us today have been part of the various consultations and discussions on how this can add the most value. We really see this as a learning network across countries, across contexts, across regions, and so on, and bringing us together as experts, as curious learners, and as those that are implementing in different ways with different responsibilities, development progress in their countries. So what we hope this will do is serve as a one-stop shop. We really see this as a knowledge hub. We'll tell you a little bit more about that through the presentation, a mix of resources, a mix of training, a mix of expert insights, an opportunity for you to pull what you need quickly, if that's what's important to you at that moment, but also to engage more deeply in conversations through a space which we're offering in Spark Blue. We want to be able to launch and grow this network with you. And we know that this will be as valuable as the engagements and the interactions that we have in this space. It will be really important to us, as I've said, not only that we're able to access and share, put a spotlight on cutting edge research, but also co-create in this group, learn together, understand from each other's experiences and experiments in different contexts, what works, what doesn't, where do we tend to get hung up on different issues, where there are barriers we might not have seen if we were only looking conceptually at a tool or an approach, so that we can support taking this into action as a collective. This is for us, as broadly as we see this. We had started with the UN development system. This is where our task teams have been operational in the past. This is where through UNDS reform measures, we know it's incredibly important that we make progress, create these spaces where we can think and work together. But we don't work alone, of course. So this is a space where we want to engage very intentionally member states, different development partners, academia, think tanks. So this is open really to all of us. And I hope that you'll see this evolution as the network jumps into gear. We have different roles and responsibilities in ensuring that this network is a success, that it's sustainable, that it grows, that it adapts and changes with us and with the needs on the ground. So we have a joint support team, and we will really encourage entities and partners that are interested to come on board as part of this. We have a number of lead entities, and more are welcome to join us, that are supporting the strategic direction, the oversight, and the partnerships. We have facilitators who are going to be energizing, and we know how important it is that we have dedicated learning specialists to really keep this network live. We want to bring a broad group of facilitators together. We are imagining different ways in which facilitators can curate and edit content at different points in the year that are particularly important for global or national discussions that are taking place. So this will, again, will be a very dynamic and open opportunity. And then, of course, the practitioners is what will make this space so special for all of us and for our objectives together. The network itself, this is giving you a little sense of what you can find on the space, and I'll tell you how to go over if you haven't had an opportunity to look through the network already. But as I mentioned, what you're able to do here, which we think is going to help us meet the needs of the largest group of colleagues that are active or curious in this space, is that you can find what you need as simply and as clearly as possible, from knowledge to events to training, etc. And you can engage as seamlessly in a deeper set of conversations on our Spark Blue digital collaboration space. And we'll be able to move back and forward from deeper conversations to distill and put the highlights of those in the space that you're seeing here as well too. And we know that everyone it's incredibly, our time is all taxed. We know that it's difficult for colleagues at all times to be engaging in deep conversation. So we want to ensure that there are different ways and means that you can both engage and get what you need out of this particular network. What next? Well, let's launch first, and we'll hear from all of our different entity partners on how they see this network, why it's important for them. We're going to hear from some of our colleagues in the field, calling in from both Namibia and from Iraq today. Why is this so important in the country context? But going forward from this launch, you will see and be invited to a series of knowledge cafes. This we would imagine in the best sense of a Parisian cafe, although we can't offer you coffee every single time, but connecting with lead experts on really important intersections of issues and challenges that are pertinent at that particular moment. These will be relatively informal. These are meant to be thought-provoking, and they will come in 45-minute segments. So we hope that that's something that's easy for colleagues to tune into. Everything will be recorded and available as well too. We hope to forge partnerships as we go through with different research entities to take forward the work of both this group and that others are doing. And you'll see a series of research highlights, blogs, newsletters, and others to keep you up to date on what is happening in the space. How can you find out more? Have a look at the space itself. So you can go to sdgintegration.org/IPPN. You can join in Spark Blue. You see the details there. Sign up so that we can share updates with you about the space. Any questions, any ideas, any volunteers, anything that you'd like to communicate with us, please do just pop us a line. We would love to hear from you, and we really want to take this forward in that spirit of solidarity, that spirit of collaboration. So please do reach out. If we had virtual doors, they would be open. That's all from me. I'm excited to get into the speakers and hear from them. So I will hand over to my colleague Maurizio from ILO. Thank you.
Yes, hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Geneva. Thank you, Laurel, and thank you, Oliang, for the nice introductions and for starting this meeting. Let me just start by saying that I'm obviously very pleased to join my fellow co-chairs of the former UN SDG task team on the integrated policy support, as it was mentioned, Perneid from UNICEF and obviously Laurel from UNDP. We are all welcoming you today for the launch of this network. The IPPN is a further step in the interagency journey that we started in the UN SDG task team. And this is really to enhance in very concrete and practical and applied terms, policy integration and coherence in the joint support that I think we have all committed to extend to the UN development systems and providing to member states for achieving the 2030 agenda. So this is our collective responsibility, and we're certainly be ready to do all our best to contribute to this. Our session today is in two parts, as you have seen from the program. First is a setter where we will reflect on the importance of policy integration for sustainable development, which is the core of this network, and the contribution that such a network of practitioners, such the IPPN, can bring to this extended family, I would say. But how does it work in practice? And this is what in the second part of our session, we will discuss the challenges and the lessons for applying the policy integration in the UN socioeconomic response to COVID, but also at country level, but also going beyond and tackling more the systemic issues beyond COVID. And as it was mentioned, we will have two colleagues from UNDP and UNAIDS, from Namibia and from Iraq. Before I start introducing the first panel, just a couple of housekeeping issues to be shared with you. We know that we have a full agenda and a limited time, 1 hour. So therefore, I encourage all participants to use the chat function in Zoom that you have been already using to introduce yourself. I mean, we have already quite a bit of an audience here, more than 200 people. And if you wish to post questions and comments, please use the same chat. Obviously, an appeal to all speakers to stay within the time limits that we have indicated in our agenda. So thank you very much again, and without any further ado, let me introduce the speakers. I will do it one by one, and I start with my colleague Qcpr, who is the director of the Multilateral Cooperation Department in the ILO in Geneva. Christophe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Thank you, Laurel, and good morning, good afternoon to all of you. So I'm very happy to be with you today for this important event, for this launch. So on behalf of the ILO as one of the UN SDG task team on integrated policy support. First of all, I would like to thank our colleagues from UNICEF, UNDP, but also my ILO colleagues for the great work. I'm also very happy to see that, as mentioned by Maurizio, this is a very well attended event with many UN agencies joining us today. Timely event, indeed. Building forward better from the COVID-19 pandemic requires, as we all know, more than ever integrated approaches and policy coherence, while obviously at the same time keeping in mind the needs and requirements from countries and regions. This is also in keeping with the wider global policy response environment that we are seeing. And here I would like to briefly make 3 points which are important from an ILO perspective. First of all, some of you may know that the International Labour Conference in June this year considered the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the world of work, and it adopted a global call to action to promote a human-centered recovery. And the call outlines a comprehensive agenda and commits countries to ensuring that the economic and social recovery from the crisis is fully inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. Importantly, also, the call recognized the need for the multilateral system to work together in synchrony towards the goal of human-centered recovery. My second point is, of course, and Arliang, you already alluded to it, is related to the follow-up and implementation of the recommendations contained in the Secretary General's report or common agenda. More than ever, and I think this is clearly stated in the report, this requires an integrated approach across the UN system and of course beyond. We, on the ILO side, we very much see this report as a UN system opportunity to support a human-centered recovery. Also important to note is that following the launch of this report, the Secretary General also made a call at the end of September during a high-level event, well attended by many heads of state, but also many heads of international organizations. A high-level event during which he launched, or he made a call for a global accelerator for jobs and social protection. We of course, obviously strongly support this call, which aimed at creating at least 400 million jobs by 2030, while extending social protection coverage to 4 billion people who are currently left unprotected. And again, I think this will be a UN system, and again, beyond UN system endeavor, and we very much look forward to working with many of you in this endeavor. My third point is related to the obvious need for the UN system to work in more integrated manner at country level. And of course, here the UN reform process launched by the Secretary General in 2018 is of vital importance. We are fully engaged in this process, and I think to a certain extent we can all take, I would say, some pride, even if the term is perhaps should be used with caution, but in the fact that this new way of working together, the system has worked rather well, and member states have acknowledged the contribution of the UN system as a whole in that regard, of course at country level, but also at regional and global level. So all these developments require us to up the game when it comes to policy coherence in the UN system and at all levels. And we very much hope to see the integration of our work amongst UN partners through the IPPN. We are very happy to be a partner of the IPPN knowledge sharing platform, and we look forward to making the best use of its resources and to join its upcoming activities. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christophe. Again, bringing the perspective from the work that we've been doing at the ILO, but this is expanding obviously to a number of agencies working on socioeconomic issues. And certainly the issue of making sure that there is a special attention to gender and to issues related to women workers, and not only workers, is of critical importance. So it's very timely, and I think it's a very fluid transition to give the floors to Maria Noel Beza, who is the Regional Director for Latin America of UN Women. The floor is yours, Maria Noel.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me well? Okay, great. Hello, everybody. It's a real honor for me to participate at this launch of the Integrated Policy Practitioner Network. Warm greetings to Stefanos Fortiu, Director of Office of Sustainable Development of FAO, and my special greetings to the Country Director of UNAIDS in Namibia, the resident representative of UNDP in Iraq, and all the colleagues that we are in the network. It's amazing to be so well connected. Let me say that in Latin America and the Caribbean, during the past year, the drop of the GDP has been nearly 7%. And the decrease in employment is in the range of 9%, the highest in all the region, and with extreme examples like Peru and Chile. Don't forget that the COVID has hit my region more than any other region. With 9% of the population, we were hit almost 25% of death and contagions. The steep decrease is characterized by a reduction of women participation in the labor market. 18 years of regression. So I'm very pleased that UN Women is joining the Integrated Policy Practitioner Network as a founding member to advance in policy integration in support of achieving the 2030 agenda, and of course, to achieve gender equality and empower the whole. Through this network, I am confident that development practitioners in the LAC region will build their capacity for SDG integration and acceleration, learn from experts on emerging methods to address complex intersectional challenge with gender perspective. Don't forget that women are different, indigenous women, Afro-descendant, disabled women, women of sexual orientations that are different. So we need to learn from other regions what is happening, how we can tackle better all these challenges. And then access to peer support, which is essential to have other experiences to integrated policy achieve. So we are fully committed in the design and implementation of socio-economic responses plan aligned with the SDG, and in the region, we carried more than 10 rapid assessment, a gender rapid assessment regarding COVID. And also we have a women count methodology in many countries like Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Paraguay, and several others. We do it with the UN system, with CARE International. We have a strategic partnership. And our objective is to do this gender rapid assessment in every country to provide elements for decision-making on the gender machineries, ministers of finance, etc. In Brazil, we have a campaign against violence against women in election that put a very special emphasis in women candidates and human rights activism. And also, I would like to flag that we have a feminist plan for sustainability and justice sector, which for us is very important because we have advanced in the rule of law and accelerated integrated actions to help countries make progress in the FDC. What we want to say to finalize is that we put women at the center of the response in order to achieve more egalitarian and prosperous society. And one of the most important policy integrated advice that we are providing is the establishment of systems of care. So with this, I would like to finish and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Maria Noel, for this very passionate and vibrant illustration of your work. I mean, it's really an energizer, particularly for those who have just started their day. Let me just now move to the colleagues in New York, I believe, a UNICEF colleague. So I give the floor now to Vidya Ganesh, who is the Director of the Division of Data Analytics, Planning and Monitoring at UNICEF, I think, addressing us from New York. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I was so engrossed in listening to everyone, and the excitement is just palpable, and it's really wonderful. And especially, you know, having been part of this journey since the very idea was was created at the beginning of the SDG era. So it's really a pleasure to be joining this launch and also welcoming to this much awaited integrated policy and practitioners network. And Laurel has explained the journey, and you can probably see the transformation that has happened from the lessons that we have learned in our previous attempts to do that. So we have been working very closely with with other fellow UN agencies, and in particular UNDP and ILO, over the many months in really coming up with the frame of a concept and the aims of the network. So we're really excited to launch it, and even more so to see how if it actually delivers on its promise. As Hao Liang also very nicely mentioned, that it builds on the lessons learned, both good and not so good, in developing the earlier architecture of the integrated policy support, of which the MAPS was and its various features was an important stepping stone. So the MAPS e-course, the SDG Acceleration Toolkit, has taught us many lessons, but that happened in response to the early years of the SDG era and the 16 and 17 and 18. But today we have a different situation, which many speakers have very eloquently and passionately explained. I mean, there's a conflation of these several challenges, and it's so close to our home, and it touches each and every one is quite unique and unprecedented, and we can speak for hours on what that is. So the COVID epidemic, and I want to put a spotlight on, while we are responding to the raging COVID epidemic, there is a recovery, but it's a very slow and an uneven recovery, and to a great extent driven by the vaccine inequities. And there is humanitarian crisis, which is not only persisting, but increasing in complexity and more in number. Unfortunately, continued political instability, climate crisis. So in many ways, while we were excited about tools to address the COVID epidemic in 2021, it has been probably the most difficult year for everyone. And we in UNICEF, we particularly see its impact on children and their rights in very acute terms, and they will have intergenerational effects for long term to come if we don't make some rapid policy interventions. But it's fair to say that it has placed all the member states and the UN system under tremendous strain to adequately address both the immediate challenges and to develop the long-term strategies that will, help hide the epidemic, but also come up with economic recovery approaches that really work. And unfortunately, as we all know, and the COVID-19 pandemic has uncomfortably and sadly bared the deep inequities, and we're really struggling about not only unpacking and learning what those underlying inequities and how they actually play out. And we're getting really much better at looking at the interfaces of how and the causality of these inequities, which then makes the whole idea of how do you provide policy support in that situation even more challenging. But maybe in a way it's easier because we are seeing the situation in glaring clarity in front of us. So we all know that UN and UNICEF, we mounted many responses with interventions ranging from life-saving supplies, remote learning, providing leadership to COVAX facilities, but we are far from really having the kind of the strong coordinated approach that is actually now needed going ahead. So while we are facing all these huge challenges, I really do see there is a momentous opportunity for us in the global development community to push for a fairer and a more resilient, sustainable, and an inclusive recovery that truly advances the rights, well-being, and equity. So in this context, really pivoting in a very fundamental way the role of the integrated policy support to pivot to a newer model approach to provide this kind of a support for policy coherence at country level is truly timely, and I'm sure that the IPPN has a crucial role to play in generating and sharing knowledge, tools, and data that are helpful to all, and policymakers and decision makers and the practitioners in particular. So together we can be stronger, and IPPN really provides that opportunity and that platform to really bring the best there is and to really unpack this complex conceptual issues of policy support, integrated policy support, and make it practical, make it really doable. And the only way to do that is to generate more knowledge and share and have the platforms and the tools to do it. So I hope that we all are inspired to work together as we shape the future of the IPPN. And I really express my gratitude to all those who have for your strong collaboration, and really excited to move forward with this huge family of UN. And I really I can't wait to be a practitioner as much as we have been able to contribute to the concept. So thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy today's proceedings and learning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vidya. And as you said, we know one thing, that together we can be stronger. This is a fact that I think we all share. But we also know that all roads, they take us to Rome. So I have the pleasure now of introducing our colleagues who I think will speak from Rome, Marcela Villarreal, who is the Director of Partnerships and UN Collaboration Division at FAO. Marcela, the floor is yours.
Indeed, Maurizio, grazie, and thanks, greetings to all of you from around the world, from Rome. So Maurizio, if you will allow, let us start with the food system. And why the food system? Well, this is the year of food systems, and the Secretary General just called his Food System Summit, considering that the food system allows us an opportunity to actually accelerate the whole of the SDG agenda. So, and the food system actually is broken. If we look at the outcomes of the food system that are, on the one hand, malnutrition, undernutrition, hunger, and that hunger is increasing. And at the same time, the system produces overweight and obesity that is also increasing, and increasing very, very rapidly. But if we look at the evolution of hunger throughout these last years. We will see that after really years of improving hunger numbers with decreased, sustained decreases, we see that since 2014, number of hungry people in the world are increasing very rapidly. And last year, due to COVID, we saw the single biggest increase in hunger numbers since we are recording this at FAO. So it's a massive impact from COVID on hunger, and that needs, in order to be addressed, this needs a systems approach for us to be able to address this issue. Now, hunger has been increasing throughout the last few years due to climate change, and that also needs a systems approach. Hunger has been increasing due to conflict, and again, we need integrated approaches here. And very importantly, last year, the aspect of hunger that has to do with economic downturn was hugely increased, as I mentioned before, because of COVID. So here again, we do need a systems approach. We need to fix the food system, and actually we need to transform the food system so that it will result in outcomes of equity, of access, equity and access to food and to nutrition for all, and also of increased resilience. Healthy diets for all. We know that 3 billion people don't have currently access to a healthy diet, and not necessarily also resilience. So we saw COVID arrived and have massive impact, not only on the food system itself, but also makes us much more aware of the need for these integrated approaches that we're talking about, and integrated ways of addressing the food system from all of the competencies that we bring together as the UN system. We cannot do it alone from only one perspective. Now, recently we had a real-time evaluation of FAO's response to COVID. And what among many things, what that evaluation showed is, let me only say 3 things. 1, adopting a systems perspective in the agri-food chain and aggravating factors of health and peace issues, linking macroeconomic and micro level perspectives with seasonal variables were effective in anticipating the holistic impact of COVID-19, especially for the most vulnerable. Second, the provision of vital information and data on the global crisis by adapting existing monitoring, early warning, and information sharing systems proved to be really essential. Third, investing in a systematic and digitized data sharing mechanism is absolutely necessary for us to be able to assess this one, of course, future crisis. We need to be prepared. And the only way of being prepared is, again, by integrating our work throughout the UN system and being able to provide that knowledge to our member countries. Now, the IPPN, we're delighted to be here in the launch. Of course, FAO fully supports the IPPN as a collective initiative from the whole of the UN. I think we will be much more effective in responding to our members' need through this mechanism. We'll be much more effective in accelerating integrated action, and therefore have very clear progress towards the SDGs. Obviously, especially at the country level, where this is most relevant, it's an ideal entry point for us to show what we can do by doing it in an integrated way. Now, different resources were mentioned, and we're delighted from FAO to bring our resources also for the benefit of everybody around the world. We do have, for example, an award-winning e-learning academy that addresses, like, for example, that helps countries be able to report on the SDGs, all of the indicators on which we are custodian. We have many other tools that we are going to be very happy to contribute. We're, of course, policy support and policy advice is bread and butter of what we do day to day at country level. So, to conclude, within this spirit of solidarity and collaboration that the IPPN network is bringing, FAO is really delighted to be a very active player and also very actively going to benefit from this integrated perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcela. We're trying to keep with time. We know that the traditions in Rome and also from my own country, which is the same, are not very good in terms of punctuality, in terms of making sure that the time is respected. So our fault here, but we'll move very quickly to Stefanos in Rome, who will lead the conversation of the country perspectives with two distinguished speakers from Namibia and Iraq. The floor is yours, Stefanos.
Mauricio, thank you very much. And let me just pick up from when you said that we will need this support to reach the ones that are on need. And I think that collectively, all the UN system, we are looking with our support how we will give the best we can give to the countries and to the ones that they are usually left behind. So to the poor, to the rural populations, to the ones that they can benefit from this support. So the best thing to learn how we can be useful at the country level and for the people, and especially for the poor people, is to hear from two of our colleagues that are on the field. And I will start with Ms. Alti Zvandor, the country director of UNH in Namibia. And dear Alti, please share to us some perspectives on how the IPPN could be useful for your work and for the work that the UN is doing at the country level. Over to you. I think you are muted, Alti. Maybe you should unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much, Stephans, and yes, I hope I got the name right, Stefanos. Thank you very much, Stefanos. Good morning and good afternoon, colleagues. It's indeed a great honor and pleasure for me to be part of this historic event of the launch of the IPPN. I think most of the speakers have already taken all the points that I need to make, but all the same, I'll need to share my own experience from a country perspective. Greetings from Windhoek, Namibia, a country that has been challenged in several ways, going from drought to COVID and a host of other humanitarian problems. But I also work for UNH, and we bring 25 years of working as a joint program and working in collaboration and ensuring, pushing the agenda for integration. Therefore, however, COVID showed that despite for 25 years experience, there is a lot more for us to learn. And I'll start by highlighting a few of the challenges that we experience as at the country level. First and foremost was the lack of data to guide our work, to guide our intervention, to guide the policy advice that we're going to give. But this was also, this pandemic came as an emergency. And in an emergency mode, you don't have time to respond, to look at all your guidelines and all the SOPs that you had already put in place. The response goes in different directions. And sometimes you really do not put those who need to be at the center. We end up putting the experts at the center, and the most vulnerable and those who should really be at the center are left at the periphery. Excuse being that they don't have the skills or they don't have the capacity. And that was how people living with HIV and key populations were actually left at the periphery of the response to COVID. The other issues was, of course, the issue of the increasing and the rapidity with which this pandemic was evolving. Hardly gave us time to even learn from the experiences or the lessons from what we were doing. So we were learning as we're crafting the ship, learning by doing. And of course, the huge impact it had on the development sectors, which my colleague from UNICEF, the colleague from UNICEF had clearly alluded to earlier. And so I want to share, and of course, finally, integration is a process. It does take time. And we have many tools. often coming from the UN development system, but also from our headquarters. And these tools need to be operationalized. Otherwise, they are just as good as materials that will sit on the table. And therefore, this need for a concerted effort to operationalize these tools and to commit to joint learning. Let me just give one example of how we responded as a country team, looking at the policy integration to COVID in Namibia. As UNAIDS, we have had lessons already on human rights and gender implementation. So what we did was to quickly draw these human rights and gender lessons from the HIV response that we've been implementing for 25 years. And to use those lessons, there was no need reinventing the wheel. There were already some important lessons, and these lessons were drawn and put to use to fast track the COVID response. In that regard, it meant that there was already a pedestal, a platform for the COVID response to learn from, and the structures that had already been in place from many years of investment for the AIDS response. The importance of real-time data was highlighted. And so working together with our partners, we put the communities right at the fore, empowered people living with HIV and key populations to monitor access to services, service availability, and using the data from them to create real-time strategic information that would guide the policy decision makers. In doing so, the analysis highlighted the need for us to work in a more coherent way and also use that as an opportunity to push some policies that had been on the drawing board for a long time. For instance, with UNICEF and WHO, we knew that the multi-month dispensing was very critical. WHO had provided that guidance many years ago, but it took the response to COVID to bring this policy into practice and to roll it out. We engage with people living with HIV, key populations and their networks, and brought them to the center of our response. But this would have been of no effect unless it was backed up with credible data and modeling that showed the cost of inactivity. The cost of inactivity was going to reverse even the gains that had been made for many years of the response. And that was a major push to move forward. The other thing we did was, in addition to bringing the communities right at the center, was to harness the important role that these key communities bring in their work and to the COVID response. Initially, civil society were not even part of the pillars for response. And when we started putting the structures for building back better, we recognized the importance of having civil society in all the architecture and the various response pillars. As UNAIDS, we facilitated the community-led solutions to saving lives and also to safeguard livelihoods. We work towards amplifying the voices of civil society and in giving greater visibility to the most vulnerable, because we think their perspectives matter in crafting a resilient community. So as we speak, civil society are now contributing in the COVID response. They are also contributing in delivering the services, but also in structures where the decisions are made and policies get reviewed from time to time. We have strengthened through civil society, strengthened the human resource capacity, because when the country started experiencing very huge numbers of new infections and deaths, the health sector got constrained. And it was civil society that came to the rescue by providing their contributions as service providers. In doing so, we have recognized that they are true partners in implementation. And finally, let me just say what we did. We seized the opportunities to ensure that there was improved coordination, because in responding to the COVID response, initial response was a bit chaotic, but with the project that we're implementing, known as the Partnership to Access COVID Testing, to increase access to COVID testing, or known as the PACT. This is an initiative of the UNH together with African Union, African CDC. Concrete things that we brought to the table was ensuring that we seized the opportunity to improve multi-stakeholder coordination. This is something that we do very well in UNH. In that way, we avoided duplication of efforts and ensured that we were all going in the same direction. But we also were able to ensure sustainability and policy change and promote integration in the response to COVID. So today, you're not just looking at COVID, but you're looking at COVID, you're looking at HIV, sexual and reproductive health, TB, malaria, and also looking at other sectors like education and social protection. All these are very important. That integration has to take this into account.
That's a nice message, Alti. Can I ask you to wrap up?
Thank you very much. I was indeed going to wrap up. Just to say that the IPPN, in my opinion, is going to provide an important niche and a space that will help us to operationalize all the various guidelines that we've been receiving and to put these tools and guidelines to use. Because if they are not put to use, these guidelines are as good as materials only for our desk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alti. Let me go directly to Ms. Zena Ali Ahmad, the resident representative of UNDP in Iraq, for her perspectives too.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, being the last one to speak, I have to be quick. But I'm speaking to you from Baghdad, Iraq. It's a country where COVID-19 was only one crisis, another layer of crisis over a multitude of crises in this country. Let me very quickly share 5 quick points of our reflections and what we have learned as a UN country team and UNDP from the response to COVID in terms of the socioeconomic response planning. The first point that we all shared from the UN country team perspective is that it's crucial to understand the impact of the pandemic very, very early on. So that triggered the need for a socioeconomic response plan. We also had a humanitarian response plan and a WHO health preparedness and response plan. So the socioeconomic response plan, where UNDP was the lead technical agency, along with all of the other UN agencies, was very important. The second is that in a country like Iraq and in other fragile countries, we need to understand that fragility is multidimensional. This has showed specifically in the case of Iraq, but I also suspect for other countries, is that a post-COVID development trajectory, especially one where we need to leave no one behind, requires a multitude of policy and programming interventions that are interconnected and interdisciplinary in order for us to understand, but also to address the key drivers of fragility across all the socioeconomic dimensions, including also security and others, all the while building the strong foundations for a strong social contract, also in fragile countries. The third is that it proved very good to look at the socioeconomic impact assessments and using them as the evidence base for recovery priorities. We really wanted to know how the pandemic could have significant impact. So we've done, along with other UN agencies, a series of socioeconomic impact assessments on health, on the economy, on social cohesion, on social protection, on the environment, on vulnerable households, etc. And we interlinked all of that together in a chapeau of a socioeconomic impact assessment that had a coordinated response and evidence base from all UN agencies. The fourth reflection is that policy recommendations would and can provide an opportunity to rethink development solutions in fragile and crisis contexts such as Iraq. So we wanted really to deepen our reflection on where the focus was needed and how to provide development solutions that can also build forward better, that can prevent crisis, that can help the country to become more resilient in the future to shocks and stresses, and to protect the hard-won development gains, all of this through a multidimensional approach. So our SERP and our socioeconomic impact assessments provide policy recommendations on the suggested way forward, taking into account that the pandemic is only one layer of a crisis and has reinforced the need to deepen commitments to peace and development through recovery efforts that bring a new approach across the humanitarian development and peace nexus through an integrated lens. And finally, I have to say that it was a very good experience of the UN working together in the best way possible. So without those partnerships, neither the socioeconomic response plan and then later the national recovery plan or the socioeconomic impact assessment would have been possible. This had led the whole UN country team to understand that sustainable recovery can only be achieved through this wide-scale set of partnerships, also bringing in together the humanitarian, the development, and the peace actors. Let me stop at that, noting the time, and congratulations to all on the launch of this very good network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zina, and thank you very much, Alti, for your concise contributions. And I get a lot of good suggestions, and you mentioned things like lack of data, lack of analytics, need for strategic information, need to not leave the people behind. And I think that resonates with what Laurel presented also in the beginning about the services that the network could provide. And I would like to address a couple of questions. So I have seen a question in the chat and I would like to address it, to ask someone to address it. And the question is, how will the IPPN support both formal and informal consultations for, and then the for is everything, the SEDAI midterm review, the Paris Global Stocktake, the SDG review, the HLPF 2023. So there's a question here if the IPPN will step into any of this support for formal, and I will say mostly informal consultations, as we know that the formal consultations, they have their own dynamics. So I don't know if any colleague, Laurel from UNDP or anyone else from UNDP would like to get on this question. Okay, so
yes, Stefanos, I could take that. We've addressed the question in the chat. So indeed, IPPN, we hope will be a network that can support such consultations, not only at global level, but also at country level, by facilitating the exchange among practitioners on the tools that enable integrations in these processes, such as risk-informed development, climate change, and of course, integration in the 2030 agenda. In the SDG Acceleration Toolkit, we've posted the link in the chat. We already have some of the tools and resources that can help support these processes in these domains. And as we develop the work plan of the IPPN, with your collaboration of all the colleagues that are in the chat, we hope that we'll try to time the activities of the IPPN so that they can be brought as contributions to these processes. And we look forward to working with colleagues at country level as well to ensure that the practical experiences from the countries are reflected in the global processes.
Thank you, Serge. And I think what Alti said, that they have bring also the civil society into this work, it's something worth mentioning, because sometimes it's the one that they left behind. So colleagues from the chat, if there's any question that is popping up, let me know. Otherwise, I think we can go to an ending. I see Mauricio is still here. So Mauricio, I don't see any other questions. So over to you for the final closing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stefanos. Thank you, colleagues. Really, it was a pleasure to interact with all of you. Some very old friends. Zena, we worked together a long time ago in the Middle East. Stefanos in Asia, other colleagues in Asia and around the world. So it was really a nice gathering of close friends and close colleagues, all engaged in this common undertaking, as it was said. From my side, is simply an opportunity to thank you all for this participation. Apologies for running over a bit in terms of time, but just a couple of minutes. So I think we maintained it under reasonable limits. I think the information in how to follow up, how to engage, how to connect further have been already presented by Laurel. Again, very timely here. The Secretariat is putting together all the contact details. Everything is there. We are very much looking forward to further engagement on this. We have a small Secretariat kindly provided by colleagues in New York who will following up on the questions that you have posed, but most importantly, we'll continue to engage, to contribute with materials, with the cafes and with the other tools that Laurel has mentioned. So a big thank to all of you, particularly to Olyang, who was with us, to all the panelists, and to the rest of the group that remained quite strong. I mean, we were more than 200 for a long time, and I guess more to come online. Thanks again to all, and the very, very best from Geneva, and good day to colleagues in New York and to other colleagues across Europe and Asia.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye to all.
Bye.
Thank you.